Alright, I want to address a little issue in one of Hoss USMC's recent videos and discuss a little bit about that whole handgun versus rifle argument on a WRL, shit hit the fan type of thing like that. And, well, one, I noticed in the video you're holding what's effectively, legally right now, a handgun. We would call that a, you know, whatever it gets built into, post-SHTF, that sort of a thing. I'm working on another video series with a project for what people could have in restrictive circumstances, because obviously what you're dealing with is a nominally compromised weapon due to a legally restrictive circumstance, which is that's not really a stock, that's not really a sound suppressor, but it's something of an effective weapon even the way it sits. On the other hand, if you carry a handgun on a regular basis and anything happens in your day-to-day life, that handgun is what you have on you. And when we look at what we do in our regular day-to-day lives, we are surviving, right? And maybe doing financially well. Maybe we do other things where our tactical credibility isn't necessarily a real factor. For example, if I'm doing my work or installing televisions, doing electrical work, the tactical credibility at this stage for me is kind of a sideline, right? But in reality, a lot of my work, in fact, before my last video where it was me sitting here doing the video, I was helping a retail business prep for an event. And in that particular situation, the retail business that needed a backup power system, they wanted to be able to keep their electrical stuff going for a better period of time in case of a power outage. Now, would they be able to last 10 years into a zombie apocalypse? No. But if they were dealing with a brownout, blackout situation in that block, in that city, something that's going on, they could do an orderly shutdown and close of their computer systems and their business based on the equipment that I installed. And because of the similarity with that equipment, with a lot of off-grid stuff that I use as far as the battery backup systems and inverters and all of that, I was able to take what had originally been estimated to be a 3-day job and turn it into a 4-hour job. So would we consider that a survival skill, a pre-event survival skill? I do. I do. That's part of what I do, is I help prep certain retail businesses for things. And other people handle the tactical aspect of that and what I do. So I'm basically kind of like a facility support guy for that. In a WRL SHTF situation, my role would be unlikely to change for those, even though I do have combat skills, even though I have been a combat skills instructor. I was usually a combat skills instructor for rear echelon people during my time in the military. But one of the things that happens is, for the general YouTube audience, and one of the things that we have to differentiate on a lot of stuff with, you know, a lot of military veterans are the gurus of this stuff. But you're not talking to infantrymen, you're not talking to troops, you're not training troops. And when we look at people who would be doing day-to-day, what we call rear echelon functions, although in a much more risky environment than normal life, you have to look at what things are going to be a hindrance to those day-to-day functions and what those are. For example, foraging for firewood, foraging for supplies, going out and meeting and coordinating with aid workers, maybe coordinating with outside aid workers, maybe helping to organize an evacuation, driving vehicles in an evacuation, loading sandbags, doing a lot of other activities where even in the military, even when I was a combat engineer, we were doing a lot of activities where you just couldn't, it wasn't practical to have the rifles on us when we did it. And even when we switched over to M4 carbines, it was a hindrance. I mean, there's a lot of times when it's, you know, ground your gear, you gotta work. And there's this constant thing about, okay, where did I ground my gear? Did I ground it on a vehicle? Is somebody going to drive away in that vehicle? What if that vehicle gets hit? What if my issue weapon was a general purpose machine gun? I've got it up on the turret of the vehicle. You know, what do I carry? And so a lot of times, depending on what your job is in the military, your primary weapon may not be your rifle, okay? And it's not because you're less of a warrior, but it's because your primary thing, your primary job you're doing takes both hands. And even if you have a weapon on a sling, and even if you have all that going on, it may not be practical to have that thing at the ready. Whereas a handgun on a thigh holster, that's around, okay? And if I have a group of people where the goal is survival, and we're not trying to make that into a combat unit, we're not trying to have them run combat operations, and they are, for whatever reasons, only going to invest in one firearm, they're only going to bring one firearm along, I'm almost at a point where I'd rather have them have handguns. Unless they're a rifleman, unless they actually kind of know what they're doing with a rifle. What I'm looking at from the standpoint is, if there are marauders out there, if there are bad guys out there, they want to be able to get at my people to interact with my people, which means they gotta close in at some point. Now, if it's somebody who's actually trying to a military operation of wiping us out, then yeah, you need rifles. And you need skilled riflemen. But for day-to-day stuff, for somebody who might be trying to rob one of our foragers, who's trying to rob one of the vending stalls that we set up on the outer edge of the retreat, maybe we put vending stalls out on the highway, and the semi-protected convoys are coming over, they have supplies that we want. We don't want to have an overly hostile presence, but we want everyone to figure out real quick that, you know, if they roll up and are interacting and then they turn that interaction into a robbery, they're going to get hurt. We've got handguns that got, you know, relatively powerful up-close weapons that they could deal with that. And for the majority, by and large, of survivalists in a community like that, if they're not gun people, if they're not combat troops, it's okay if they just have handguns. It's okay. I think what's more problematic under those circumstances is if we're trying to get those people to encumber themselves by having rifles and shotguns all the time. I think what would end up happening is those rifles and shotguns end up being left at home, left in some of the comfort areas, or it reduces the common people's efficiency in their work. So I'm not going to say it's totally wrong. I would say that it kind of depends on what somebody's role and mission is in the circumstances.